Good morning, students. Today I am going to start a new topic called constructors in Java. Constructor is one of the very important components of Java programming language. A constructor is a special method having the same name as that of a class. Example: if the name of the class is computer, the name of the constructor will also be computer. Now consider this Java program as shown in this slide. This program creates a class called cake. This class cake contains two data members. The first data member, weight, is declared of type float, and the second data member, flavor, is declared of type string. Since the data member weight is of type float, that is why it can accept only decimal values. Whereas the data member flavor, since it's declared of type string, it can accept alphabets and special characters such as $, hash symbol, etc. In addition to these data members, this class cake also defines three member methods. The first method is public cake without any arguments. The second method is also public cake but with two arguments, W and F, of type float and string respectively. Here the argument W refers to the data member weight and the argument F refers to the data member flavor. Then it consists of another member method known as public void showcake without any arguments. Now, which out of these three methods do you think is the constructor? Is it public cake without arguments? Is it public cake with arguments? Or is it public void showcake without arguments? Now see, as per the definition of constructor, a constructor is a special method having the same name as that of a class. So these two methods identified by the name cake, okay, the first one without the arguments and the second method cake is having two arguments, that is W and F. Both these methods is having the name cake, which resembles the name of the class, and that is also cake. Now again, forget about this access specifier, that is public, in this method as well as here in this method. So forget about these two access specifiers, which is public. Now other than that, you have the name of the method as cake, firstly without arguments, and again the method cake we have with two arguments. Now both these method cake resembles the name of the class, which is also cake. That is why these two methods are the constructors. These two methods are the constructors. So let me mark the first method as a constructor giving a comment that this is a constructor. Let's denote this constructor as the first constructor. So this is the first constructor of this class called cake. And again, let me identify the second constructor with a comment line, that is with the text second constructor. But see the third method, that is public void show cake. Here public is the access specifier, so just ignore that, and void is the return type, just ignore that. The name of the method is show cake. Now if the name of the method is show cake, this does not resemble the name of the class, which is cake. That is why this particular method, as its name does not resemble the name of the class, this particular method is not a constructor. So I can comment it as a member method. So the first two methods are the special member methods known as the constructors. This is because the name of these methods resemble the name of the class. But the third method is not a constructor. This is an ordinary member method because its name is showcake, which does not resemble the name of the class. Now let's discuss about the properties of constructors. The first one is constructors has the same name as that of the class. This is already discussed. Now come to the second point. Constructors cannot return a value. Now you remember in my earlier presentation I have shown you a Java program which declares a class called currency. This class contained one method known by the name convert. This method returns a value with the help of the return statement, and the value returned is the product of the arguments AMT and ROE. And since the arguments were of type float, that is why the product of the arguments AMT and ROE is also of type float, and the value returned, since it will be of type float, that's why the data type of this method called convert is also declared of type float. Now see, this is an ordinary member method. That's why it's able to return a value which is of type float. This is not a constructor, as the name of the method is convert. The name of the method is convert, which do not resemble the name of the class, which is currency. So only member methods can return a value. Constructors cannot return a value. Since this method convert is not a constructor but an ordinary member method, so it can return this value, that is the product of AMT and ROE. Now consider the methods here: public cake without any arguments and public cake with the arguments W and F. These two methods cannot use the return statement to return a value. Okay, these two statements cannot use the return statement to return a value. This is because these two methods, that is public cake without any arguments and public cake with the arguments, are constructors, as their name, which is cake, resembles the name of the class. But this method, that is showCake, can use the return statement to return a value, because the name of this method is showCake, which does not resemble the name of the class. That's why this is not a constructor, and such type of methods which is not a constructor can easily return a value with the help of return statements. But the methods whose name resembles the name of the class are constructors, and these methods cannot use the return statement to return a value. Now see the third point. Constructors are used to initialize the member variables of a class. Now initialization means assigning certain values to the member variables of the class. So in this example, the first constructor, that is cake, without any arguments, initializes the member variables or the data members weight with the value 0, and it initializes the member variable or the data member flavor with a space. While the second constructor initializes the data member or the member variable weight with the value of the first argument, that is w, and it initializes the second data member, that is flavor, with the value of the second argument, which is f. So this is how the initialization takes place in the first constructor and in the second constructor. In the second constructor, the initialization comes from the arguments, which are then assigned to the data members. But in the first constructor, since there are no arguments, certain values such as 0 is assigned to the first data member weight, and a space is assigned to the second data member called flavor. Now you see that the space is enclosed within inverted code. So why is it like that? This is because since the data member flavor is declared of type string, so any string character has to be enclosed within inverted code. Whether you declare the value of this data member flavor as ampersand has to be declared within inverted code, or if you declare it as, say, the special character $, the $, has to be enclosed within inverted code. Now in this case, I have just put one space as a character, so even space has to be enclosed within inverted code. So for data members with the string data type, whatever you declare for this data member, the value assigned has to be enclosed within inverted code. But for data members of type which is not a string, that is for the data member weight, since its type is float, that's why you assign a decimal value, say 0.0. Now see, assigning 0.0 and 0 is the same thing, because since the data member weight is declared of type float, even if you assign 0 to the data member weight, internally the compiler will treat this 0 as 0.0. Okay, so it will add a decimal into it. But these values which are assigned to the data member weight should not be enclosed in inverted code, because they are not of type string, they are of type float. Now see the fourth point. Constructors cannot be called explicitly. They are called at the time of creation of objects. Now if you consider this program, where do you think you create the objects? Do you create the objects inside the class? No. you create the objects inside the main method, okay, but this main method is inside the class, okay, because this is the opening curly bracket of this class called cake, and this is the closing curly bracket of this class called cake. And the main method is inside this body of this class called cake, that is it's inside the opening curly brace and closing curly brace of the class called cake. So this main method is within this class called cake, and the objects are generally declared inside this main method. So just come inside this main method. Let's see which are those objects that are created for this class called cake. The first line inside this main method creates an object called birthday cake, okay, it creates an object called birthday cake using the new keyword, and this is represented by the statement cake birthday cake equal to new cake. Then within bracket you have two arguments. The first argument is 2.5 and the second argument is a text vanilla within inverted quote. Now as soon as this object called birthday cake gets created, the control shifts from here to the constructor. That means as soon as an object of a class gets created, the control calls the constructor for that class. Now there are two constructors, the first constructor and the second constructor. So which out of this first constructor and the second constructor do you think will be called on creation of this object called birthday cake? Now see, this object called birthday cake has been created with two arguments. The first argument is the value 2.5 and the second argument is the text vanilla enclosed in inverted quote. So obviously if the control shifts from this statement to the constructor, it is going to call the constructor having the arguments. So the second constructor, it's going to call the second constructor. It's not going to call the first constructor without the arguments. This is because if an object is created for a class with arguments, then it is shifting to the constructor and it calls that constructor which is having arguments. That's why it calls the second constructor. This object birthday cake has been created with two arguments, and in the same way this constructor, that is the second constructor cake, also has two arguments, that is w and f. So clearly on the creation of this object called birthday cake, the second constructor shall be called, and on calling this second constructor upon creating this object called birthday cake, the value 2.5, which is a decimal value, will get copied to the first argument, that is w. Okay, so I just write 2.5 just to make you understand. And the second value, that is the text vanilla, will get copied to the argument f. So vanilla gets copied to the argument f. So now w will have the value 2.5 and f will have the value vanilla. So if the value of W gets assigned to weight, that means the value 2.5 is going to assign to weight. And if the value of F is going to be assigned to the variable flavor, that means vanilla is going to be assigned to the variable flavor. So just for you to understand, I just write 2.5 here and vanilla here. Now again come to the second statement inside this main method. The second statement creates another object called anniversary cake, having two arguments, which are 4.5 and chocolate. So again, after the creation of this object called anniversary cake, the second constructor will be called, not the first one, because while creating this object called anniversary cake, you had two arguments, 4.5 and chocolate, and the second constructor also has two arguments, that is W and F. So it's matching. That's why upon creation of this second object called anniversary cake, the value of the first argument W will now hold 4.5. okay, now you see this 4.5 represents the first argument of the second object, which is anniversary cake, and then chocolate will be assigned to the second argument F. So when 4.5 is the value of the first argument W, and when W gets assigned to the data member weight, then 4.5 will get copied to the data member weight. And when chocolate, which is the value of the second argument F, and if that gets copied to flavor, then chocolate will be assigned to flavor. Now you see, these values are not for you to write it inside this program. This is only for you to understand, and I'm going to erase these values soon after explanation of this program. Next, come to the third line and execute the statement birthday cake dot show cake. Now this birthday cake is the first object that was created. Now with the help of this first object, which is birthday cake, you are calling the method show cake. Okay, you are calling the method which is show cake. I have just reduced the font size of this text. Now see, when this object birthday cake is calling the method show cake with the help of this dot operator, the control shifts from this statement to here, that is from this calling method to the call method, which is show cake. Then it enters inside this method show cake and executes the first statement, which prints the text weight. which is within inverted quote using the statement system.out.println. That's why the text weight gets displayed exactly as it is in the output. Then you are going to add something to it using this plus operator. What are you going to add? You are going to add the value of the data member weight. Since this method showCake has been called using the first object, which is birthday cake, that's why the value of this data member weight that was assigned to from this argument w will be 2.5, because 2.5 was the value of the first argument w when the object birthday cake was created. That's why here the value of the data member weight will be 2.5. Then come inside and execute the second statement inside this method showCake, which prints the text flavor within inverted quote using the statement system.out.println. So the text flavor also gets displayed exactly as it is in the output. Then something is added with the help of this plus operator, and the thing which is added is the value of the data member called flavor. Now the value that is assigned to the data member called flavor is from the second argument f, and it will take the value vanilla into it. This is because when this object birthday cake was created, at that time the value that was assigned to the data member flavor from the second argument f was vanilla. That's why vanilla gets displayed in the output as the value of the data member flavor. Now come to the main method again, then come below this third statement, execute the fourth statement. The fourth statement uses the object anniversary cake, that is the second object, to call this method showCake. Then as soon as this object anniversary cake calls this method showCake, the control shifts from this fourth statement to the call method, which is showCake inside this class. Now remember, the method from where the control shifts is the calling method, and the method to where the control shifts to is the call method. So this is the call method. Now this call method showCake will be executed with the help of this object, that is anniversary cake. Now come inside this method, execute the first statement, which prints the text weight using system.out.println. So the text weight gets displayed as it is here. Then something is added to it, that is the value of the data member weight. Now the value of the data member weight will take which value of w? The second value, which is 4.5, because the value 4.5 was assigned to the first argument w when the second object, that is anniversary cake, was created. And since we are dealing with the second object anniversary cake, and to call this method showCake, so the value of w now will become 4.5, that is coming out of the first argument. And finally this value 4.5 will get assigned to the data member weight. So the value of this data member weight will now show the value 4.5 as shown in this output. Similarly, if we come to the next statement, it prints the text flavor followed by the value of the data member flavor. Now the data member flavor is going to take the value of this second argument f, but this is going to take the value chocolate, not vanilla, because chocolate was assigned to the second argument f when the object anniversary cake was created, and currently we are dealing with the object anniversary cake to call this method showCake. As a result, for this statement, flavor and chocolate gets displayed in the output. So in the output, the first piece of weight and flavor shows the values 2.5 and vanilla, and this was when the object birthday cake was created. And the second piece of weight and flavor shows the value 4.5 and chocolate, and this was when the object anniversary cake was created. Now I'm going to delete all these values that I've typed here, because these values were only for you to understand. Now that I have finished explaining these programs, these values are not necessary. So let the program be as it is. So now it's just like as it was before, just these arguments are assigned as values to the data members. So this is how this Java program makes use of these constructors, and the output gets displayed upon the creation of both these objects and the particular method which has been called through these objects. So that's all for today. In the next presentation, I will discuss a new topic.